And of course, President Trump is correct. MAGA is on a roll right now. They are accomplishing an enormous amount. And whatever, this kerfuffle about Jeffrey Epstein and whatever secrets may or may not be hidden by the government today, can't cloud out the extraordinary accomplishments of this administration. And as you point out about the transparency, it's also important to remember, and I know you remember this because we talk about it all the time, there has been extraordinary transparency from this government, from the Trump administration. And you can point to things like the border, which I think is the single greatest accomplishment, kept promise of any candidate who has ever run for public office. It is extraordinary what Trump has done at the border, and that's what he ran his campaign on. Another thing that he ran the campaign on was tariffs. And he promised that he was going to rewire the way the economy works in hopes of it being a better place for people who work, a better place for young people, working class people, I hate the word working class, but working people who don't make as much money and want to get a purchase into the American dream. And his payoff for the month of June, the federal government ran a massive $27 billion surplus, which is for the month of June, which is an extraordinary thing. The fact that we're running a surplus at all is and when you look back and think about all the poo-pooing that the media did and all of the economic experts who said this would never happen and Trump was going to destroy the economy, they are all been proved wrong by this one man, Donald Trump.
I mean, look at these headlines, CNBC. By the way, Wall Street Journal, CNBC, these are all the money experts. They were saying tariffs are going to raise much less money than the White House projects. Donald Trump, and this, by the way, reminds me of the situation of the border, where he was told by, all the experts and all the consultants, you're going to lose the Hispanic vote if you want to close the border. If you talk about, deporting people. That's not true. It turns out Hispanics believe in rule of law.
And that you could never close the border.
And that was the other thing. He said, yes, you can if you put your mind to it. He knew that because he kind of was already getting there. In 2020, we had, before he left office, we had the first time, we had the safest border we had ever seen. But now we're down to like zero. Like nobody's crossing the border. But look at these headlines of all the naysayers saying that Donald Trump's idea of tariffs would destroy the economy, would not result in anything.
Yeah, that was then, and this is now, right?
So on April 1, CNBC says tariffs will likely raise much less money than the White House projects, economists say. On Friday, CNBC, Treasury posts unexpected surplus in June as tariff receipts surge. Reuters on April 4th, Trump tariff now is so fears of trade wars, recession, and a $2,300 iPhone. Thursday, last week, U.S. customs duties top $100 billion for the first time in a fiscal year.
It's incredible. And again, they predicted, Kevin, trade wars that we would be, the pariah of the economic world, that nobody would want to work with us, that we'd lose. It's not true.
Not true. And not only not true, it goes back to what Scott Bessent, I think, told you. I was watching one of the shows, and he said, I don't follow what the media and the so-called experts say. I follow the trends in the market. He knew what he was doing. He has proven it over and over and over. And you know what? Howard Lutnick and the president's brain trust really has collectively decided we are going to do things differently. It worked back, as you said, from 2016 to 2020, save for the COVID pandemic, which, of course, is a black swan event. They were certainly moving things in the right direction. And they, again, believe that if you follow this track, now, if we can only somehow get the if we can get the Fed to get on board with this and lower rates, and maybe they have to move off of Powell, but that's a separate story. But the fact is, if you look what they've done so far, and we're only, as you mentioned, 6 months in, imagine what we'll be like, say, 6 months from now. And I'll put this out there. If we can get the rates down and they keep moving in this direction, 2026 will be the greatest economic year for this country ever. And I can make that confidently make that prediction because we've seen this play out before. And there's a reason that it works. Add all that plus the surplus and the tariffs, I think great days are ahead Just got to keep it rolling. Keep it going.
More tariffs coming. He's saying to Mexico, for example, in August, if we're gonna impose tariffs there. What's he gonna do with all this money? Does it go right into the deficit reduction? Will he use it, for example? I know that the big beautiful bill got, I think, $12 billion towards the air traffic control system, the New York, but they need $30 billion. So will another 15 or 16 billion go towards that? Can they get that money from there? What happens with this? That's an interesting question, isn't it?
Yeah, I think a lot of it does go towards debt relief, but it also goes into the general fund. And the thing that I think is so important to remember is that for decades, conservatives have pined for a consumption type tax. Some way of not punishing people who work, whether you're a blue-collar worker, a white-collar worker. If you are producing something, the government should not punish you for producing, for working. And that's what's so corrupt about the way federal taxes works. It punishes people for working. And Donald Trump, through innovative thinking, is the only person to come along, no help from anyone else, and say, you know what, we're going to try to do it this way. And by raising money through tariffs, it becomes a consumption tax as opposed to a tax that punishes people for working. Donald Trump loves people who work, and he wants people who work to be rewarded, and God bless him for it.
And that goes back to the border again, which is why
100%.
It's so important. You close the border, you limit the amount of people that come in seeking low-skilled jobs, and suddenly that labor shortage means the wages for the working class rise. Again, this is Donald Trump. Donald Trump sticking up for the working class and sticking up for those who are working the hardest in our country. And again, this is about putting a businessman in the White House. And so is it any surprise that we have these results?
Juicy.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.